Ashley with At Home with Ashley, and this week we are making a dress. I'm going to Disneyland with my family, and I'm like, I need a new outfit. I don't know if when you travel you do the same, but it's maybe my toxic trait. I'm like, I need something custom for this trip. But my sister bought me a $2 sheet from the local thrift shop, and it has Minnie Mouse on it, and so I'm like, I can make a dress from an old sheet. It's a flat twin sheet, and that actually gives you a lot of yardage, so I know I can make a dress out of this. So I thought I would make it and I could show you how it turned out. Let's get started. For this project, I'm going to use the Selena Sanders 3-bow blouse pattern, and I do this for the top, and I've done her pattern like 4 times and I love it. It's so cute. The only alteration I'm going to take is that you kind of have to crop it so that it's short enough to be kind of like an empire waist dress or a fit and flare dress. So under the second strap is where I'm going to cut out the pattern, and then I just like kind of measure and see like, oh, here's this on this section. That's so the front and back are the same. I wanted to talk about one other alternation I made. I forgot to say. So the neckline on this was straight, and I don't like a straight neckline for myself. So I took I don't know what this is called, a curve ruler, and cut out like a more curvy neckline for myself on the front and the back, just like a small curve. Okay, so next I am pinning on the back pieces. And this sheet actually has a lot of wear, so I'm trying to work around it. I think especially the top of the sheet has wear, like here's a hole here, here's a hole here. So I want to avoid those so that I can wear this more than once before it rips. So the great thing about, this is a twin size sheet. The great thing about it is that it's like 5 yards of fabric. It's way more than I need, so I can be a little bit picky with getting this where I want it. So the most important piece when you're cutting out is going to be your front bodice. So I'm just like looking and seeing, okay, I like this mini the most, so I'm going to put it right over it. And you're not going to get the whole thing because the pattern's big and the piece I'm trying to cut is small, but that's okay. Cut out all the bodice pieces. I'm going to do the sleeve, and just be warned, it's giant. So you have to have a lot of space for it. Last thing that needs to be cut from the pattern are the straps. This is what's going to make the bows on the back. And on the normal pattern, you cut 6 of them, but because we cropped the top a little bit, we're only going to do 4, so you can have 2 bows. For the bottom of my skirt, I don't use a pattern, but here's what I do. I cut out 2 rectangles. They're both going to be 24 inches long by 42 inches wide. And this is a little bit wider than that, so I might make it a little bit wider, but I'm not going to do the full width, because if you get too much ruffles, it like is too heavy on you. So 42 to 44 inches is what I normally like to do for both the front and the back. Okay, I ended up not cutting my fabric all the way through to the end, and the reason I did that is because I need an 8-inch strip, and that's for the hair bow I'm going to make. I like to make a hair bow for all my dresses. So it needs to be 8 inches wide by 36 inches long, and if I would have gone all the way through, I would have 2 24-inch sections, which probably would have been fine. I could have pieced it together, but I'm going to cut that over so I have a piece for a big old bow. Next thing I'm cutting out of my pattern fabric are pockets for the skirt, and I do use a pattern for this. This is McCall's M7948. So it was a whole dress, and I only use the pocket now. But this was like what was left over from the skirt. I ended up making it 48 inches wide. We'll see if that's too much fabric, but the leftovers are perfect for pockets. The last thing I'm going to cut out for the whole dress is the lining. And the pattern for the top comes with lining for just like the neck area, and I find that never lays flat, so I don't like it because I have to iron my dress every time I wear it. So what I do is I just do a full lining on it. I cut out the exact same front and back with like white cotton, and then that'll all get sewn together. It's nice lining, so it's not see-through, and then you get the nice neckline. So I just cut it out of white fabric, white cotton fabric, and it works really nicely. Okay, we are going to be sewing the skirt, which is pretty easy to do. So first, I'm just going to serge around all the edges of both skirt pieces and all of the pocket pieces. And then I am going to create the hem. For the hem, I like to fold it over about 1.25 inches and then I iron that flat. And the great thing with ironing the hem is that when you take it to the sewing machine and stitch the hem, you really don't need to pin it because the iron does all the work. So do that for both skirt pieces. And then we are going to sew the pockets onto the skirt. And all you have to do with that is put right sides together. So the front of the skirt with the right side of the pocket, and have that go to the top of the skirt, sew a straight line to sew that on, and do that for all 4 pieces. On my sewing machine, I change the stitch length to 5, and I add a long tail to the front and the end, and I stitch all the way down. You can do 2 stitches if you have thicker fabric. I'm a little lazy, so with thin fabric, I just do 1. And then I take it to the table and I lay down my bodice piece, and I start gathering by holding one of the strings with one hand and then with the other pulling a gather. And you make sure it's kind of gathered evenly across and that it ends up the same width as your bodice. Last thing we really need to do for the skirt is we are going to sew the front and the back pieces together. So I'm going to pin the skirt front and the skirt back together, and when I'm doing that, I'm also going to be marking 4 inches down from the top of the skirt for how far we're going to sew the pocket shut, and 2 inches up, and that just leaves a nice space for your hands. And so it's not like a gaping hole. If you don't do this, it's too big and stuff falls out of your pocket. And then we're going to take it to the sewing machine and sew where we marked, go around the pocket and go down the side of the skirt, and that's going to put your 2 skirt pieces into place, and it's going to have your pockets all finished. And next we just need to work on the bodice. Today we're working on the bodice, and the first step is creating the bows. So we cut the ties, and now we're going to just fold them in half, fold each tie in half with the right sides together, and then we're going to sew around the tie with a 1/4 inch seam allowance, leaving the one short end open. And then we need to get ready to turn it right side up. So the first thing we're going to do is clip the corner of the tie just to reduce some bulk. And then we're going to turn the ties right side out. I'm using a loop turner for this, but once you have it right side out, press them flat. Now we're going to sew the bodice. And to do that, we're going to pin the ties on the back bodice according to the pattern placement markings. So if you didn't mark those before, you can just pull out your pattern and see where you can put them. And then we're going to take the bodice to the sewing machine and stitch those ties in place. And then we're going to sew the darts on the front bodice. To do this, we're going to pull out the pattern piece for the bodice, and there are markings for the darts. So we are going to transfer those onto the bodice piece. Then we're going to take it to the sewing machine and sew on the marked lines. And once those are all sewn in place on both parts, we're going to iron the darts towards the hem. We are going to repeat these steps with the bodice lining, so we have the darts and iron them in place, and that way it'll fit great with both layers. So now we are going to attach the lining to the front of the bodice, and to do that, we're going to sew the lining to the bodice pieces along the neckline. Remember, this is how we get this like beautiful neckline. We're going to turn it right side out and press it. For the back of the bodice, we're going to sew the lining to the bodice pieces along the neckline and on the middle opening. Then we're going to turn the bodice right side out and serge any raw edges where the pieces were not sewn together, and this will prevent any fraying. Okay, today for our dress, we are working on the sleeves, and the first thing we are doing is we are going to tunnel in the elastic for the shoulders. So to do that, you just need to iron over 1/2 inch and then repeat. Then you're going to pin it in place and sew at the edge and repeat for both sleeves. Then you're going to tunnel the elastic in. You're going to use a 1/4 inch wide elastic. I'm cutting 2 pieces that are 9 inches long. I'm putting a safety pin on the end of the elastic. Then I'm pushing it through that like little channel we just made. And then at the end, I am stitching it in place. And once I get it to the other side, I'm also stitching it into place. So then you have this nice elastic area, and repeat that for both sleeves. And then for the hem on the sleeve, we are also going to repeat and do the exact same thing. So iron it over 1/2 inch, fold it over again 1/2 inch, and then sew that into place. For the elastic on the sleeves, I like to do 14 inches of elastic, and then we are also going to put that in place using a safety pin so we can push it through the channel, and then sew it into place on each edge. So now we are going to attach the front bodice to the sleeve. To do this, we're going to start at the armpit and pin the front bodice to the sleeves and pin the sleeve seams together, and then sew the front bodice to the sleeves and sew the sleeve seam closed. Next, we need to sew the side seams closed. So what we're going to do is to pin the side seams together and then sew down that side seam, and you're going to go from the sleeve all the way to the bottom of the bodice, and that kind of connects the front to the back. Then we're going to serge that seam and press it so it looks nice and flat.
At this point, the dress is almost done, which is so exciting. All we need to do is to tie bows onto the back. So those 4 ties we made, we're going to connect 2 of them and make them 2 bows on the back. Just tie a nice strong bow. Take your skirt, turn it inside out, and take your bodice, also turn it inside out, and start pinning them together. Make sure you get lots of pins in so that it's connected, and we can then take it to the sewing machine and sew all the way around from the front to the back of the skirt, and this connects the top to the bottom.
I finished this dress back in August and I worked at Disneyland and it's so cute. Let me show you how it turned out. I love it. It was very comfortable to wear. I love the bows in the back. I've also made this dress where I reversed it and had the bows in the front, and that is probably my favorite dress, the one that I did like that. So there's lots of options, and you can also buy Disney sheet dresses from like sewists that sell them on eBay or their own shops. I know of 3, and each of them, like, it's like $225 to $250 per dress, which I love supporting like slow fashion with upcycled materials, but it is a lot of money. So it was fun to be able to make my own where I only spent $2 on the project, and I have this really cute dress that I've now worn to Disneyland and Disney World. And it's just really fun, and you can make this dress with any fabric, but it's really fun to do like the upcycle version. If you have any questions on the process, please let me know in the comments. I'll also link a blog post which has more details. If you like this video, please make sure to give it a thumbs up, and if you're not already, please subscribe.